invitation. It's my pleasure to welcome you to Friday Cafe and to say Happy Friday. We made it. Woo! Friday Cafe is always the highlight of my week. I hope it's the highlight of yours too. So we're at Trinity College in Mather Hall, and everybody found a place to park successfully. So that's the hardest part of the morning. It's all downhill from there. So let me just ask, I think we have quite a few new people here. Who's here at Friday Cafe for the first time? Woo, welcome, welcome. And who is a returning guest? Yay, welcome to you too. It's wonderful to always have new people join us at Friday Cafe. We are in our 4th year, so we've been through, about about 3.5 years of sessions. I was looking at our numbers the other day, and we've had over 2,000 people come to Friday Cafe. Wow, yay. So many of those are repeat visitors, but we filled 2,000 seats with our networking events on Fridays. That's pretty awesome. What I want to do is, for those of you who are new to Friday Cafe, just kind of let you know a little bit about what you've gotten yourself into. So this is primarily a professional network, and the reason for that is that our tribe of people who do this work don't really have a place to meet. There's a national conference that's come online in the last few years, and this year it's happening in July, and it's in Cleveland, Ohio. And so if you're not tuned in to the fact that there's a great national conference, be sure to look that up, and if you need more info, just see me. And a number of people who are here have been to that conference. But what happened is the first year they had about 700 people, the next year 1,000 people, the next year they didn't have enough space because there were 1,700 people who wanted to go. And so the numbers of people nationally too who are finding a need for a place to gather to talk about family engagement is growing. So I think our field is having a moment, and that's really exciting to see family engagement as a high priority issue. So we're here, we do things at Friday Cafe like meet new people and develop a network, build the professional identity for this work around family engagement, and also one of our goals is to expand our thinking. I think today's session is going to fit right in to expanding our thinking. We have been talking this year, if you've been to sessions already, I'm on a quest, I'm on a mission to ban the words hard to reach when we're talking about families. I always say families know where they are. We just haven't done a good job of making the connection. And part of it is because the professionals in this work don't get a lot of training. We don't have solid pre-service programs and in-service programs. It's getting better, but we're not there yet. So we're not using the words hard to reach, but we're looking for more and different ways to connect with families. And so today's session is going to be about crossing the bridge around language and around culture and using the tool of music to do that. So I'm excited that Dr. Eric Gallm has volunteered to host the session, and I have to tell you, I met Eric at a Friday Cafe last year, maybe the year before last, and after the session he was leaving, and he came up to me and he said, "We can do this at Trinity. I want to do this. There will be drumming." And that was it. I was in. I was like, okay, whatever you say. And so here we are. We've made it a reality. So I want to thank Trinity for hosting us, and this beautiful spread we have for breakfast. And I want to thank my partners at CREC, of course, for helping to make Friday Cafe happen. And with that, I want to introduce you to Dr. Eric Gallm, and he will be your guide on our adventure this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. Before we get started, I would like to introduce somebody who will then introduce me as well. But first, I wanted to give a big thanks to Judy Carson and Betsy Laborious for all the work that they do to make this happen. So thank you. And then also for local arrangements here at Trinity, Ilda Ramos, who really stepped up and did a lot of work to help make this event happen. So I'd like to thank her as well. And it gives me, just for housekeeping, you'll see on your table there's some cards here. Just a shameless self-promotion. I am launching a free online 4-week mini course that's really minimal work, just about music and community. So if you know of anybody who might be interested, it's free. If you want a certificate from Trinity, then it's $50 for that, but otherwise everything else is totally free. And it's really about music and culture. You have an opportunity to record a sound from your community, and we'll have a world map that you can upload your sound from your community to that map, and have an opportunity to make some musical instruments, and just think about music and culture and how they all kind of function together. So they've got that. And then also I hoped to have some cards, I don't yet, but on April 26th through 28th, we're going to have a conference here about building community in Brazilian music, and that will include a processional from Minas Gerais, Brazil, where we're going to have a gathering in front of Austin Arts Center down the hill. This will be on Thursday the 26th in the evening. We'll do a processional to Trinity's Chapel, and then do what we call a missa conga, or a congado celebration that spans back hundreds of years in Afro-Brazilian history, where we'll do a interfaith drumming celebration at Trinity's Chapel. And then, of course, the 12th annual Samba Fest will be on campus on Saturday, April 28th, from 11 to 6. We'll talk to me, and also if anybody's interested in promoting your organization or setting up a table, I have 2 students in the back, Karen Navarrete and Ashley Wisniewski, who are happy to take your contact information. So without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our brand new Assistant Dean of Students, the Reverend John Sellers, who's going to say a few words of welcome on behalf of Trinity College. So, John. He's also a musician.
Yeah. so I'm at home with folk that do music, right? I'm a musician. I am the son and the grandson of piano players. And so in my church, it was 2 things you did. You went to Sunday school and you learned how to play Amazing Grace, you know? Good morning, and welcome to Trinity College. How many of you, you don't come up here very often. How many of you, this is your first time on campus? Wonderful. I hope it is not your last time. On behalf of President Joanne Berger-Sweeney and our entire campus community, we welcome you this morning. It is a priority for Trinity College to be in the hood, or I guess I should say in the community, to make sure that this institution that has almost 200 years of history in the city of Hartford, make sure it is connected, and I mean connected real tight and real good with those of us who are in the community. I say those of us because I live right down the street. I am a resident of Hartford, and I am pleased and glad that you are here, that we are together, working together, doing the various things we do. This is just one of many things we do, and I'm appreciative of Professor Gohm, our colleague and friend, for being the conduit to have you here. And feel free to walk around the campus if you don't get a chance before you leave. Just walk down what we call the long walk. And this beautiful campus situated, nestled, who would have thought it's nestled in the city of Hartford. It is a jewel, and take full advantage of it. The bathroom's right there, if you need, a little housekeeping. And have a great and wonderful morning and session here at Trinity College. Thank you for being here. Peace.
Birimbau bateu, capoeira eu vou. Quem vem lá sou eu, quem vem lá eu sou. Birimbau bateu, capoeira eu vou. And you say, quem vem lá, and then quem vem lá, here we go. Come on, hey up, quem vem lá, who goes there, quem vem lá, wake up, quem vem lá, deep breath, quem vem lá, hey oh, quem vem lá, who goes there is me, there I go, beating bow, I play, capoeira I know, quem vem lá sou eu, quem vem lá eu sou, beating bow, bateu, capoeira eu vou, and you say, quem vem lá, man, quem vem lá, wake up, quem vem lá, yeah, oh, quem vem lá, come on, quem vem lá, thank you, quem vem lá, once again, quem vem lá, yeah, quem vem lá.
Bom dia. Let's all say bom dia. Bom dia. Bom dia, which is good morning in Portuguese. So, I'd like to start with a story, and this is from the book Birimbau, which is this musical bow, by Raquel Coelho. And it's about a young boy walking in the woods among ruins, and he encounters an Afro-Brazilian man with a berimbau. The man began to play, and Leo opened his eyes so wide as if he was listening through them. When the man stopped playing, he told Leo that the upper part of the bow pointed towards the sky. He looked up and saw himself grow into a man. He saw his sons, his grandchildren, and his future. He looked down and saw the lower part of the instrument point towards the ground, and he eventually saw his ancestors, his grandmother and great-grandmother, and all those who came before him. When the image disappeared, the man handed his instrument to Leo and said, "The upper part is the future, the lower part is the past, and in the middle is a young boy who's a little distracted and full of stories in his head. And that little boy is you. The berimbau is my present to you. Every time you play it, remember me and these things I have told you." This story reflects a representation of deeply rooted aspects of Afro-Brazilian and Central African beliefs in which the power of the spirits and ancestors can be joined to create the present. These concepts have been passed down from master to apprentice and parent to child for generations. And so I need to switch here for a quick second because I printed out the wrong version of my printer. So I'm going to I'm going to continue my story a little bit with my trajectory, kind of how I got to be here. So we are all part of a community, yet we don't always communicate. Sometimes just by sharing some of the things we take for granted, we can help to make a difference in other people's lives. I started my journey learning about this musical bow many years ago, and to be honest, I had no idea where it would take me. It is most frequently thought of within the context of capoeira, an Afro-Brazilian martial art dance game, where this musical instrument sends musical codes to the dancers about when to start, when to stop, what style of movements to make, and to warn of potential dangers from within and beyond the dancing space. Capoeira is perceived as a traditional folkloric art form, but that makes an assumption that it will remain as a static representation of the past. Here's an example about how musicians have mixed and merged capoeira with the music of James Brown and concepts of Black power within their music. So, just reconnect. Here we go. Oh, sorry. Oh, don't stop. It stopped. All right, try it again. Go back a little So this song comes from a traditional capoeira song where the group Bidden Brown mixes elements of capoeira and the berimbau and James Brown. So their name is an iconic fusion between the musical bow and James Brown. And okay, so I'm back to this. So sorry for the running back and forth here. So where are you? There it is. Okay, so I wrote a book about this instrument, and I managed to bring Bidden Brown to Hartford 3 times, where we performed a lot of public school events, including an outdoor concert at Smith School in West Hartford, where my children also attended. They had students and teachers rocking and dancing throughout the whole event. Several weeks after that event, I was at a parent coffee, and a Brazilian mother stopped by to tell me about her daughter, who had refused to speak a single word of Portuguese at home. The mother said that during the concert, the daughter started singing along with the songs, and her peers looked at her and asked her if she understood what they were singing about. She said yeah, and translated the words for her friends. After the performance, she came up and got autographs from the entire band, and then she went home and wouldn't stop speaking Portuguese. The mother was so appreciative that her daughter not only started speaking her mother's language, but she had a newfound pride in Brazilian culture and a positive sense of self. So you really never know the true impact of the things you put out there for people to learn about. As I keep challenging myself to experience different teaching situations, including state prisons, K-12 schools, senior centers, I keep asking myself, how do I reach the hard to reach? And it's important to remember, as Judy said, there are no hard-to-reach parents. My experience working with Afro-Brazilian music and musical instruments has demonstrated to me that we need to see music and culture as active agents in the present and not something that is framed in a historicized past. When I recently saw the movie Black Panther, I was reminded of the complex musical structures that have existed for centuries in some African societies. One of the misconceptions that is still passed along today is that African-descended music in the Americas consists of rhythm from Africa and harmony from Europe. The problem with that is that for several hundred years, distinctive tonalities, scale systems, and harmonies have been in use throughout Africa. It's just that the Europeans did not recognize them. Music is my passion. I'm just showing one small piece of a larger engagement process, and I want you to have a part of that experience. Ideally, I want to see music, math, language, all connected through a creative process. So what I'd like you to do is take a moment and talk amongst yourselves, to ask a question with each other. And as I'll put this back up, but I want you to ask these 2 questions. Is music important in your life, and why? And then also, how is music represented in your school community? So this is your moment to chat with each other. Right, so here's the questions once again. So is music, that's where you can talk to each other. Right, so is music important in your life, and why? We'll just take a couple of brief seconds to go over this. And then just try to gather how is music represented in your immediate community if you're not connected with the school. Go. You can also introduce yourselves if you have others.
We're going to Jack. You know each other already?
Yeah. Yeah, very good.
Rather than classical string. He does teach there. We talked about that before. I'm sorry, I was just gonna say. Well, I'm really sure. We have buckets. So how did you decide to make them? You know, performances and plays. So, I get what you're saying about, you know, should it really be?
Any practice? Yeah, I've been in 2 productions so far. It's pretty difficult. It's usually practice. Yeah, I've been really busy.
I mean, I hate to cut it short, but we have 1 minute.
So if you come to our house, somehow in the show,
Okay, so can we, if we can just come back together quickly and just get a couple ideas, and then we're going to move on, because I don't want to miss out on the hands-on stuff. So what are a couple of things about how music is represented in your community? What are ways in which music is present? Yeah? Yeah, go ahead.
I think in our middle schools and high schools, elementary is always present, but middle and high school is a wonderful way for our students to express their response to literature. They hear a piece of music, or they read something, and then they are so moved they can put it to song or instrumental or whatever. And not all of our children are going to be great writers or poets, but they can certainly all have a response to the literature. Music gives them a wonderful opportunity.
And it's really interesting how when we join words with a melody, it enhances that meaning of that, rather than just the spoken word and then also they're embodying those words with different pitches in their body, so it becomes a comprehensive felt extra sensory memory as well. So, okay, other quick ideas? Yes?
We were having a discussion about music being represented in a particular school, but not representative of the students in the community there. And that can create a discord.
Yeah. And so when you're talking about community, what types of settings in schools do you find music, like when they're having a community gathering, what type of event does music usually manifest itself? Where do you see those most frequently? Concerts, that's one. So that's within the school, but representative of the school, what would the closest thing to that be? Like culture nights, multicultural nights, talent shows, yeah. So those seem to be like extra add-on spaces, right? So okay, great. So enough thinking about it. So why don't you all stand up?
So since my work is deeply rooted in Brazilian music, we're going to look at 2 rhythms that come together to basically make the foundation for Brazilian music. So you have 2 cyclical rhythms. The first one is a cycle of 3 beats. You just go 1, 2, 3, 1, step, the light one just catches us and stabilizes, so we don't have to stomp on that light one. But you have to fall into the heavy beat, right? So you have a light, heavy, light. So let's do that together. Your high heels don't make marks in the floor. So light. But you gotta fall down. We're not, here, like light. Okay, great. Now we're going to put those two together, right? So we're going to clap and do the light step. Another clap, heavy step, clap. Review, right? So together, clap, step, clap. Let's try that again, right? So together, clap, step. Let's do it again, right? Together, clap, step. Together. The great thing about cyclical music is you get a lot of chances to get it right, right? Together. Let's get it right. Don't clap on the bass line. Together. Together. Almost. Hey, that's over. A little faster. So that is the fundamental component of what makes up the samba rhythm, and actually many different types of Afro-Brazilian rhythmic structures. And so the important thing is you have a setting up of a beat, and then you pull against it, right? And so just since we have a minute, let's just introduce the instruments. So this first instrument here is called a surdo. Can you say surdo? Right. And so surdo, anybody speak Portuguese? So, and how about Spanish? Anybody speak Spanish? Yeah. What does sordo mean? Deaf, as in you can't hear, right? So sordo or surdo in Portuguese, right? So the surdo is the drum of the deaf, right? So it's not the drum that you hear, but it's the drum that you feel. So I can come over. So go ahead and plug your ears and feel the vibrations of the drum. So it's the drum that you feel, not the drum that you hear. And really, this is the drum that makes up the heartbeat of the Brazilian samba. And what happens is really, this is what's at the fundamental of it, is you have this heartbeat. Right? And in that, you're setting up a pattern of expectation, right? And if it ever gets suspended, that's what creates the excitement and the anticipation of that resolution of, I set it up, okay, and then what happens if I don't, and I come back around, right? And it's just basically fancier ways of setting up. So that's what makes it exciting, is because you're setting up tension and immediately finding resolution, but then you're pulling against that right away, and you're pulling on that tension once again. So that's really what's at the core of that. What's this instrument? The surdo, right? And so that's the surdo. And then the next level is tamborim. Can you say tamborim? Right. And so go ahead and clap as if you're playing the surdo. So you have a light, heavy, right? And we'll make a little rhythmic conversation. Right, so you see that we can't do this. I can't do it by myself, and you can't do it by yourself, but we have to come together to make that rhythmic conversation. So you have to hold up your part, and I have to pull against what you're doing, and that's exactly what's happening. This is called the tambourine. You say tambourine. Tambourine. So tambourine is different than a tambourine, right? So shake a tambourine has jingles. Sounds like this. Tambourine, you shake it, sounds like this. No jingle. So that's the tambourine. And then just another quick instrument is the shokayu. So shokayu or ganza. So say shokayu. Shokayu. Or ganza. Ganza. And here's an example of we have cultural collision in a musical instrument because ganza is a Central African word for shaker, but shokayu is a South American indigenous word for shaker, right? So all of a sudden we start to see things coming together. So go ahead and clap, just so people are like, oh, I'm going to play shaker, but just to show you how you can subdivide and dice it up even further. So a little faster, light. So pandero, let's say pandero again. Pandero. We have the surdo, right, and the tambourine, and the shokayu and the ganza all right in here, right? And then I'll just bypass just in different times. So samba would be like with the light and the heavy. Okay, just very quickly, we need to learn a Brazilian samba song. So one word you have to, well, a couple words, but first is quais. 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 Quais kulungundum. Quais kulungundum. Quais kulungundum. That's all it is. So I'll sing it once and then you just jump in and let me hear your boisterous haha, right? So I go. Quais kulungundum. Quais kulungundum. Quais kulungundum. Não posso ficar mais um minuto com você. Eu sinto muito amor, mas não pode ser. Moro em Jaçanã, se eu perder esse trem, que saia coração de ouro, sua manhã de manhã. Além disso, mulher, tem outra coisa. Minha mãe não dorme enquanto eu não chegar. Sou filho único, tenho minha casa pra olhar. Pam, 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 pam. Quais kulungundum, quais kulungundum, quais kulungundum. You get one more chance. Quais kulungundum, quais kulungundum. I can't stay here one more minute with you. I'm very sorry, dear, but it just can't be easy. I live far away in Jaçanã. If I miss my train, that leaves at 11 o'clock. The next one's tomorrow morning. Besides this, my dear, there's something else. My mommy won't sleep until I get home. I am an only child. I have to watch over my house. Bum, 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 here we go. With a head on it is you can always turn it over and ask for money afterwards. So what's that song about? Really quickly.
Right. So here's somebody who's had the ultimate conquest and is finding ways to get out of a situation, right? So if we look at a gendered reading of that, what happens? So the ultimate masculine persona, what's his excuse for having to leave? He's a mama's boy, yeah, so that's right. So that's one way of looking at it. So the thing is that sambas are written in a way that they're abstract enough that you can apply many situations to the single set of lyrics. So another interpretation would be, like, for example, in the buildings in Copacabana and Ipanema, even though they're not skyscrapers, but tall apartment buildings, they're still built brick by hand. And the people who build those, when I would kind of observe this in the late 80s, early 90s, people were working 50, 60-hour weeks for about $50 a month. So that was the conditions. And so somebody constructing a building, right behind us, would be singing these songs from sun up to sundown. And so then as a work music, it's like, I'd love to stay here and work all night, but I have to catch the last train home. And thinking about the commute for the urban commuter, you go out to the suburbs, it doesn't become more wealthy, but it's a more rural and more working class the farther you go. And so, for example, I would take the train to avoid the evening rush, and I'd get home at about 9 o'clock to have dinner at night. And so my teacher I was working with said, well, the people who live at the end of the line, they'll get home at about midnight, and then in order to get into work the next day, they'll have to leave about 4 a.m. So they're at home for 4 hours, working these conditions for 6 days a week, And so when somebody says you live the life of a sambista, that's exactly, you're singing these songs as a way of your life and as a way of coping with situations. And then a third way would be if we're sitting around waiting for a bus or a train that hasn't shown up. Now this is before we had phones, so we can't check the app and see where the bus is on the GPS and things like, or play our Candy Crush or whatever people play, right? So what do you do? Well, people would sit around. You're in a situation where nobody can do anything about it, so you sing a song and collectively build that community of the moment, basically singing about the ironic nature that we all have to go, but we're stuck here, and so that's how this music really functions within a cultural context. Okay, so enough about that. We need to jump into action just so that we don't run out of time. So I'd like to encourage everybody. Well, I'm not going to. You all have to come up and grab some instruments. So I think just for simplicity, let's try to fill up these 6 large drums if we can, and then just grab one of the tambourines and a drumstick. So come on up because you don't have time. Well, actually, grab these ones here, the tambourine, yeah. No, let's make a circle also. Yeah. We're playing that. Yeah. Yes. All right. So let's make it as generous of a circle as we can. So it might be more of an amoeba. Actually, you know what? Somebody grab the shaker. So just go ahead. That'd be great. All right. Okay, you all ready? Yeah. Okay, so oh good, I have a couple ringers to help me figure it out. Okay, as they figure out their straps, here's a quick tutorial on holding the drum
with a stick. So basically, anybody who goes, so first of all, look down at what you have in your hand. And stand next to somebody who holds something that looks like what you have in your hand. So you
The tambourine section over here.
we got some adventurous folks there. All right, let's try this again. Are you all standing next to, you should be in a group, right? Yeah. Okay, and we'll have two sections of, so we have more tambourines over here. Yeah, so if you guys go over there. Yeah, sure. Great, and then just slide it. Yes, very nice. You don't have to tell anybody. Okay, so anybody with a stick in your hand, basically if you did not have a stick in your hand, where your thumb meets the first joint in your index finger, that's where you're going to want to hold the stick and then wrap the rest of your fingers around. So you don't need any funky, right? So it's just like you pick up a stick on the street, and so it's like right in here. The other thing is try not to hold it in the middle or all the way at the end, but about an inch from the end. Right? And then the other thing is with the tumbling, where your fingers meet your hand, around where the shell will go, will rest in there, and then you put your thumb on top. Do not put your thumb in the middle because you will hit it and it will hurt, right? And then the other thing is, you don't want to play right in the middle of this particular head because it's a dead spot. So kind of in this crescent. The other thing is if it was a mirror, just hold it up and see how great you look, right? But the other thing is make sure that your fingers are not here, but it's as if you're here. The problem is that, like, just case in point, if we're going into physics and things, if you hold the drumstick like this, you're using 17 more muscles in your arm than if you go like this, right? So I'm trying to save you, very more distance than anything. So go ahead and pull your drumstick. So, and then shakers, you just hold them on the side, and then just do like that. That's it. We'll work on it. So, and these instruments, these will play right in the center, and basically it's just a stroke, just a hit, and then you muffle, right? So we're just pretty much doing that, right? Okay. So now, what we okay. All right, you ready? Yeah. Are you sure? Right. Okay. So let's. Yes.
A quick question.
Yes.
I apologize for being late.
That's okay.
What is that instrument you said
With the bow or the pandero.
With the little.
With this one
No,
here.
I'm playing that one now.
This one?
Yeah, you're not playing that one for this round?
Not for this round, no. So like this. So if this didn't have jingles, this would be just like a pandereta from Puerto Rico, right? Right in there, but it has jingles. So, and the thing is, like, if we look at DNA that's embodied in musical instruments, so the tambourine that we're most frequently, well, not most frequently, but that you find in the orchestra, that comes from Italy, because we know that because the jingles are flared open. You see that this one has closed jingles and it has a flat disc in the middle. That means that the DNA of this instrument comes from the Middle East, which is the same with Middle Eastern tambourines that you find there. So by looking at what makes up these instruments, we can see where they come from, right? So, okay, so that's a little aside, sure.
No, I was going to call it a tambourine, so the aside helped.
Right, so pandero, and but they anyway.
Yeah.
So, okay, so let's start. Let's see if we can just maybe push the edges back just so we can get more of an amoeba than this edge. Unfortunately, our insurance policy doesn't really cover everything. So, all right, so let's slide down a little bit more. There you go. Fabulous. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so let's start, and you guys will just have to keep me on track time-wise because now I'm lost, right? So, okay, so let's step to the right together and to the left. You guys can take smaller steps. Right, to your left, to your right, to your left, right? We should all be going the same direction, not like windshield wipers on a bus, right? So to you, right? And also at the same time, left. So the thing why this is really important is because this is going to set our time, and this lets us know that we're playing at the same time. So if you have a neighbor who's drifting east while you're drifting west, go ahead and just help nudge them along in the direction. So just, it's there you go. Yeah. Okay, to your right, to your left, to your right, okay. So here we go. So now we do this. I'm going to play 2 beats, and you will respond, right? So go ahead and put your drums up. You're ready to go, right? So I start and go. You play. You guys can share. So this is a me thing. So me, everybody. Me. So if we can just slide over just a little bit. That's great, excellent job, all right? You're all hired, right? So, here's what we do. So this music is music that's performed most frequently during Carnival. So Carnival celebration lasts, 5 days, 4 nights, at least, right? And so the thing is if you're going day and night, you need to learn how to stop and start. Otherwise, you go until you pass out and you just get up and keep on, right? So the way we start is I'm going to give you these 4 beats, and on the 4th beat, he's going to play 2, and then everybody plays 1. So I'm going to go ba 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 boom boom ba, right? So let's just try that and stop. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, and everybody plays 1, right? So the boom boom ba. Let's just try that. Ready and try again. Ready and again. Ready go. Right? So we almost have We Will Rock You here, right? So right, right. So okay. So just one. Just go right straight out. Good. Now that bop is the first note of your bop, 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 bop. So you need to step while you play that one. So feet together, let's do the same thing, but just step while you play it, right? So then we'll go back. So feet together so you don't fall over when you step out, right? Ready? So that's your first step of bop, bop, ba da bop, and let's go on with the whole thing. So what's going to happen is bop, bop, boom, bop, bop, ba da bop, and bop, bop, boom, 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 bop, boom, bop, boom, boom, right? Okay, so let's go. So let's just try and see where we go. Back and up, right? So here we go. Just stepping and playing the one was just training, so now we go on. Now that's your first note of that larger pattern, right? So here we go. Let's try it again. That's good. I'm loving the confidence, right? Together, ready.